In other business news, economic analysts say while the idea of a government of national unity brings hope for broader consensus, there are risks. It's highlighted that it also introduces significant policy uncertainty. This is said to weigh on consumers facing reduced access to services if the government struggles to implement cohesive economic strategies. Compliance officer at the National Debt Advisors Dehan Scherman discusses this with us. So good afternoon to you, Dehan. How exactly is it that proposals of this government of national unity will impact South Africa's economic and investor confidence?
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. It creates quite a lot of uncertainty in terms of just the different political parties that are going to form part of this government of national unity. These parties are on different sides of the political spectrum and have to come together now to decide on policies that the government is going to proceed in implementing. And that is what's causing this uncertainty. Like you've mentioned, the investors are reacting well. However, we've also seen a bit of a mixed signals throughout the election so far. The rand was performing well, then it performed poorly, and then it performed well again. So there is a bit of mixed reaction in terms of the government of national unity and which direction the government is going to head into moving forward with all these different political parties on the political spectrum.
And some of the practicalities that speak to uncertainty and risk are the potential direct effects of this policy uncertainty you speak of on ordinary South Africans, how it affects yours and my pocket.
True. Consumers are just as uncertain, and I would say that this uncertainty is going to speak into consumers not making those big financial decisions, like taking out a home loan, for example. Up until there's more certainty and there's more direction and I suppose more confidence in this government of national unity, because we haven't really seen anything like this. We saw this previously in '94. However, the dynamic was completely different. The circumstances were completely different and the political landscape was completely different. So this is, for all intents and purposes, uncharted territory.
Uncharted territory indeed, and some of the potential deadlocks that may emanate from political ideology to economic policies are also at play here. Talk us through how much that feeds into the uncertainty.
Well, I looked at the statement of intent that the ANC released, and point 20 speaks to deadlock breaking mechanisms being incorporated to try and avoid potential deadlocks. Now, that's all well and good on paper. However, in practicality, we first have to see how that plays out. We have no idea how this is going to play out and how the different parties are going to coexist to govern the state in our best interest. So it speaks to, for example, investors possibly holding off on making any large investments up until there's actual policy certainty in place. Consumers holding off on making those big financial decisions and spending money up until there's direction and certainty. And that may speak into, at least for the short-term, economic performance.
Based on that, would it be a fair question to ask whether this GNU should be given a timeline for that uncertainty to be addressed and maybe fears allayed?
Now that is a good question and a very difficult question to answer. As I said, this is uncharted territory, so we can't really give it a set timeline as long as there's progress, as long as there's transparency, as long as the government of national unity provides that information to the public so that the public is kept abreast of the developments. Like, for example, what they did by publishing the statement of intent. That showed that there was transparency, there was clarity. We all heard this concept of government of national unity, but we didn't know what it meant up until they published the statement of intent. Anybody can access it, anybody can read it, and understand at least the framework that government is going to operate within.
Lastly, the measures that consumers can take to prepare for a potential economic instability amid all this uncertainty.
My advice, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Prepare for unemployment by making sure that you have provision for such. Prepare for load shedding, touch wood, it doesn't return. And consult financial advisors and debt counselors like National Debt Advisors if you're experiencing any sort of financial concerns that you need alleviated.
Thank you so much for your time. That is Dehan Scherman, who is with the National Debt Advisors. They're talking to us about how financial markets as well as the economic landscape is receiving the walk towards a government of national unity.